One man who is in the United States is the coolest cat in Washington, D.C., the one and only Garland Nixon. Garland, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. When your president broke the news to an excited claque in Washington that Britain's new prime minister was somebody called Rashid Sunak, what do you think he meant?
Well, considering that he once referred to Barack Obama, he stumbled to his name and he said, "my old boss," and then he eventually referred to him as, and literally, Rab Rock. So, I mean, if Barack Obama is Rab Rock, I guess Rashid Sunak. When it comes to Joe Biden, you just kind of take what you get on any given day. As close as he can come, we'll take it.
How's he doing? How's he bearing up? I keep seeing videos of him that are more and more unhinged. Is that how the American people are now seeing him?
Well, generally what we get from Joe Biden is he goes somewhere, he gives a speech, he stands in front of the podium, and then he wanders around the podium for considerably longer than it actually took him to give the speech, with his arms out looking for someone to talk about, and eventually an aide comes and directs him off of the stand. So Joe Biden is, I guess, searching for the ghost of Corn Pop or someone to lead him around. But right now, I think he's about to walk into a very, very serious problem in a couple of weeks when it comes time for people to head to the polls.
Yeah, I wanted to turn to that, of course. You were the first man to predict a wipeout of biblical proportions, I think you said. The opinion polls seem to have caught up with you. Tell us how it's looking for Biden and the Democrats in 2 weeks' time.
I don't think it looks well for the Democrats. One of the things we have to look at is history. Historically, the Democrats in any given year don't show up well in the midterms, so we don't expect them to have a strong turnout. The Democratic Party is, not thrilled right now. One of the big stories right now, and I think it will be of consequence when it comes to the midterm, about 30 members of the alleged left flank of the Democratic Party wrote a document and they sent it to Joe Biden. It has been interpreted as some kind of a left-leaning call for diplomacy. If you actually read it, it's pretty much a tongue bath for the neocons. And there's like one sentence that says, on top of everything that you're doing that's wonderful and all of the wonderful weapons we're seeing, we should add diplomacy. So about 30 Democrats put that out. Within 24 hours, they completely backed off of it and basically said it was a mistake. The mainstream media said, and this is hard to believe, they said, that's exactly what Vladimir Putin would want, a call for diplomacy and peace, which means, of course, I guess if Vladimir Putin was in favor of tooth decay, the Democratic Party would if he opposed tooth decay, the Democratic Party would have to be in favor of tooth decay. So for 24 hours, they claimed that they kind of wanted peace or something, and that went out the door. We're seeing more and more videos of members of the Democratic Party being heckled and, verbally accosted by their constituents who are unhappy, to say the least, with what's going on with Ukraine and the subsequent funding.
Well, no disrespect, implicit disrespect, but the Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, it's all a chimera, isn't it? These 30 liberal imposters, their opposition to Biden's policy, and as you've explained, it wasn't even really opposition. It lasted less time than snow on a wall in the springtime.
Well, and not only that, their excuse was absurd. So Pramila Jayapal, which is the head of the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, said that this thing was actually written back in June and the staffers released it. Throw the staffers under the bus, why don't you, right? The staffers released it apparently without her knowledge. However, I did quickly institute my old investigative skills to actually read the document. And I found the document mentioned, one of the things that mentioned that the annexation of Ukrainian territory by the Russian Federation, which didn't happen until late September. So if her excuse was it was written in June, then somehow she must have had a premonition when she wrote it that there would be some of some of Ukraine annexed. Either that or her story is a complete lie. I'm going with the second.
Yeah, I lean towards the latter interpretation. But I suppose the point I'm trying to make is it's not just Biden. It's the entire rotten edifice of the Democratic Party. This, the Great Hope, AOC, and all these lefties, Muslims, black women, and so on, they've all turned out to be, well, to say the least, a gigantic disappointment.
Yes, but people, we should have saw that coming. So I am a person, I've been in media for a long time. So for every year they have something in Washington, D.C. called the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference. And they have all kinds of, events and various and sundry things all over the place. When you go to these events, you will see on the wall, sponsored by Lockheed Martin, sponsored by Pfizer. This year, on the webpage, it should still be up, Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference. Go to the webpage and it says, powered by Amazon. So there's nothing but more neoliberal corporate puppets there. They're calling themselves the Congressional Black Caucus, but they're just a corporate caucus. And ultimately, when they wrote this document, the thing that I think is important, I would encourage everyone to read it, is it reinforces every neocon trope within this document where they're supposedly saying they want diplomacy, but they start off by saying that Ukraine is an independent, sovereign, democratic country. Well, we overthrew the government in 2014. What kind of government is overthrown by the U.S.? They have a puppet government installed, and we still call them an independent, sovereign nation. So they are simply pushing lies and neocon claims to their constituents in the guise of calling for diplomacy.
But their constituents are the ones suffering by the gigantic siphoning off of US taxpayer dollars to the military-industrial complex and thence to Ukraine. All these billions of dollars could have been, putting food on the table of American taxpayers, giving jobs, building hospitals and schools, and propping up the crumbling infrastructure. I guess that's why the public are beginning to heckle them.
Oh, absolutely. And what we're looking at a couple of things here. Let's not forget, 1 year ago, in June of 2021, Congress passed a $250 billion bill supposedly to counter China technically. On technology. 1 year later, which is August of this year, they passed a $280 billion bill to challenge or China on technology or something again. Then, of course, we're up to about 110 billion to Ukraine. Money is no object to these people when it comes to handing it out to the people who are going to fund their campaigns. And people are getting hip to this. I'm hearing more and more people who are members of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, to be quite frank, getting sick of their party members. And I think we're seeing we're going to start seeing an exodus. I think a lot of people are going to vote with their feet. I think you're going to have a lot of Democrats, or rather not vote with their feet. They're going to stay home and rake leaves on election day.
Now let's turn to election day. I did read some polling today that the Republican candidates backed by Donald Trump, the ones that have his endorsement, are all miles and miles in the lead. It's likely to be a good night for Trump, isn't it?
I think so. And one of the things that again, we have to take this into consideration, and that is Donald Trump has made part of his stump speech recently an opposition to, if not just the war in Ukraine on moral basis, the money going to Ukraine and the danger of nuclear war. And I think that's one of the things that is marshaling his troops together. I think that's one of the things that is going to get people out to the polls. So the Republicans have something to actually a reason to get people to the polls. The Democrats basically have nothing but, January 6th, and we're afraid of Trump. I suspect the Democrats are going to pay a heck of a price, and then we're going to see a fight in the Republican Party, because this element that is more a populist element, the MAGA element, I think they're going to be pushing back against the mainstream Republicans that just want to be part of the machine and to feather their nest with neocon, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon money. So it's going to be interesting to watch the fight in the Republican Party. Two fights: the fight in the Republican Party regarding policy, but then the fight in the Democratic Party, because I imagine there will be people saying, we just took a beating, we need to reverse course. And the mainstream media and the people who fund Joe Biden and the neocons are not going to be in any mood to reverse course.
But we've talked before about the attempt, clearly signaled, to criminalize Trump, to put him out of the race in 24. They don't have long left to do that, do they? Because if this goes the way we both think it will, they're going to be out of power effectively in a couple of weeks' time. So are they going to try some kind of indictment, grand jury, charges, or has that run out of steam?
It wouldn't surprise me if they do, because I don't put anything past this Democratic Party. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make an attempt. It's going to be considerably harder when the Republicans get one or both, as I suspect, both houses of Congress, because they're going to be investigating I suppose they're going to be looking into the workings of the FBI and its connections to the Democratic Party and some of the things that happened during Russiagate. So it's going to be much more difficult for them. They want to do it, but I don't know if they'll be able to. The other question is this: will the Republican Party actually do an honest investigation, or will it be, how can we investigate on behalf of the deep state so we can tie everything to China, so that rather than looking into Hunter Biden in Ukraine or Romania or any of the other things, or Joe Biden, they will simply say, we want to tie Joe Biden to China, and we want to do an investigation that the people in Langley, Virginia will be standing up on their seats clapping for. That's, I think, a question that we have to take into account.
Fascinating. We'll talk again at election time. Garland Nixon, thanks as always for joining us on the mother of all talk shows.